President Trump is making another reckless move. This time, President Trump has declared that Greenland will become American territory by 2029. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's take a look right away. Before that, if you want to get the fastest international news in the country, please make sure to subscribe to Sense Studio. I ask for your support. President Trump himself predicted that by January 2029, when his term ends, Greenland will be under American control. President Trump has argued that securing Greenland is directly related to America's national security, and he has consistently expressed the opinion that the United States should expand its influence in the Arctic region. He especially emphasizes that as Russia and China are expanding their military and economic influence in the Arctic region, if the United States fails to secure control over Greenland, rival countries could gain a strategic advantage. This is not the first time President Trump has made remarks about Greenland. Even before taking office, he publicly expressed interest in Greenland, and even mentioned the possibility of the United States directly purchasing it. At the time, there was significant controversy in the international community over the fact that the US president mentioned another country's autonomous territory as a potential purchase. The Danish government and Greenland authorities immediately pushed back, stating that Greenland is not for sale. Afterwards, President Trump also showed moves to pressure European allies over the Greenland issue. He warned that if Denmark did not cooperate with the United States' demands, he could impose tariffs of up to 10% on European countries, even resorting to economic pressure. Afterwards, as internal NATO discussions took place, tensions eased somewhat, but President Trump has not changed his original stance on the need to secure Greenland. Currently, President Trump is approaching the Greenland issue not for territorial expansion, but from the perspective of US security strategy. He argues that, as the importance of the Arctic region grows, Greenland's military position and resource value are linked to America's future competitiveness. Accordingly, it is highly likely that efforts to expand influence over Greenland during his term will continue in the future. In particular, President Trump brought up the Greenland issue again at the NATO summit, putting pressure on European allies. President Trump repeatedly stated that Greenland is a region of great importance to US security and that it should be controlled by the United States, not Denmark. He also hinted that if European countries continue to reject US demands, the US could reconsider the deployment of American troops stationed in Europe. In this regard, CNN reported that the Trump administration considered a plan to reduce the number of US troops stationed in Europe to about one-third of the current level. President Trump has long argued that European countries rely on US military power without taking enough responsibility, and analysts say that the recent review of US troop reductions is also a measure that stems from this perception. In particular, it is known that some NATO member countries' lack of active participation in US-led military operations related to Iran has increased President Trump's dissatisfaction. President Trump expressed strong dissatisfaction, saying that European allies did not stand together with the US when needed, and it is reported that he directly mentioned the plan to reduce US troops stationed in Europe during internal White House meetings. After that, the US Department of Defense adjusted some of the troop rotations that were scheduled to move to Europe and showed signs of withdrawing some troops. In fact, there are growing concerns in Europe recently that the security role the US has played may decrease. There is a lot of attention on how the size of US forces stationed in major European regions, such as Germany, Poland, Italy, and Romania, will change in the future. As President Trump continues to put strong pressure on allied countries, there has been a change in the level of trust in the United States within the international community. Especially among major European countries, concerns are growing about the direction of US foreign policy, and there is analysis that the alliance-centered international order that the US has maintained could be shaken. The survey results released by the Pew Research Center are being evaluated as an indicator that reflects this atmosphere. Among the 36 countries and regions surveyed, 25 showed a higher favorability toward China than the United States. Not only in the United States' traditional allies like Canada and Mexico, but also in major European countries such as France, Germany, and the United Kingdom, China was rated more favorably than the United States. On the other hand, the countries where the United States received a more positive evaluation than China were limited to a few, such as South Korea, Japan, India, Poland, the Philippines, and Israel. In particular, there is significant international attention on the fact that even countries that have maintained security cooperation with the United States are showing changes in their perception of the US. Similar results were found in surveys on trust in national leaders. Among the 36 countries and regions surveyed, it was found that in 22 of them, President Xi Jinping of China was evaluated as being better at handling international issues than President Trump. The Pew Research Center has been surveying global perceptions for about 20 years, but this is the first time that evaluations of China have surpassed those of the United States. Several factors are believed to have contributed to this change. It is analyzed that President Trump's demands for increased defense cost sharing from allies and his remarks that could clash with the existing international order, such as the Greenland issue, have heightened concerns about the role of the United States. Especially in Europe, there are growing doubts about whether the United States will continue to take responsibility for security as it has in the past. The United States has long maintained its international influence not only through strong military and economic power, but also by cooperating with its allies. The US-centered international order has been maintained because allies in Europe and Asia have trusted and cooperated with the United States. However, there are concerns within the United States that if the policy of prioritizing national interests is strengthened and conflicts with allies continue to occur, it could put a strain on America's diplomatic influence. President Trump's hardline foreign policy may increase negotiating power in the short term, but in the long run, it could affect the alliance network that the United States has relied on. Let's go back to Greenland. The country that is most strongly opposing America's request for Greenland is Denmark. However, the reason Denmark is objecting so strongly over Greenland is not just because of its economic value. The key point is that Greenland is an autonomous region belonging to the Kingdom of Denmark, and handing it over to the United States is an issue related to territory and sovereignty. For Denmark, it is difficult to accept the idea of treating Greenland as a bargaining chip to be negotiated with another country. Greenland operates its own government and parliament, but in the areas of diplomacy and defense, it is influenced by Denmark. Denmark has maintained a political relationship with Greenland for a long time and still plays a role in managing Greenland's security and international status. Therefore, the United States demanding control over Greenland for reasons of national security is considered a request that is difficult for Denmark to accept, even between allied countries. In addition, European countries do not see this issue as a problem concerning only Greenland. They are concerned that if a major power is allowed to expand its influence over another country's territory for security reasons, it could affect the very foundation of the international order. Especially since World War II, Europe has placed great importance on the principles of national sovereignty and territorial integrity, so it is taking a cautious approach to the demands of the United States. Denmark is a NATO member that has cooperated militarily with the United States for a long time. Amid Russia's increased military activities and intensifying competition in the Arctic region, they also recognize the need for security cooperation with the United States. However, separate from the alliance relationship, they maintain the position that decisions about Greenland's future should be made by the people of Greenland and Denmark themselves. The Greenland government has also stated that this is not an issue that can be decided by either the United States or Denmark, but that the will of the people of Greenland is the most important factor. Currently, discussions about independence are ongoing in Greenland, but there are also voices saying that the direction should not be to join the United States, but rather to make decisions through their own political judgment. What is important here is the position of the people of Greenland. Currently, the issue of Greenland may seem like a conflict between the United States and Denmark, but the most important parties are the residents living in Greenland. Greenland has long existed as a part of Denmark, but there have been ongoing internal discussions about political self-determination and independence. Greenland gained autonomy in 1979, and later in 2009 it was granted even greater autonomy, allowing it to operate its own government and parliament. Currently, Denmark is responsible for foreign affairs and defense, but within Greenland there are opinions that it should eventually become a fully independent country. Many residents emphasize that they have the right to decide their own future. However, wanting independence for Greenland and becoming part of the United States are completely different issues. Some people believe that Greenland should break away from Denmark, but that doesn't mean they want to become a territory of the United States. Among Greenland residents, there are voices saying that neither the United States nor Denmark should decide their future, but that the will of the residents should come first. Especially since Greenland has a population of only about 50,000, there are many practical concerns regarding the economy and security. For independence, they need to secure their own economic base, and they also have to address security issues in the Arctic region, where the influence of Russia and China is growing. For these reasons, even among residents who support independence, discussions are ongoing about how to shape the future of the country. When President Trump expressed his intention to acquire Greenland, some residents paid attention to the possibility of economic investment and security cooperation that American interests could bring. However, there is strong resistance to the idea of an external country deciding Greenland's future. As a result, even within Greenland, the idea of joining the United States is not very welcome.